fascinating story how that began. I also have a food company, and so I was taking my food products to shows, and I didn't want to be the same humdrum tent with a pop up tent with a table. So I bought a Model T so I could use it as a display for my food company, and then ironically, I ended up having a heart attack and I almost died. And the doctors put me on some strict rest where I was only allowed to walk for 10 minutes a day, and they didn't want me doing really anything else. And for about 6 months, so I got into just going out there to my shop and polishing the Model T and taking things apart, putting it back together, and I kind of just grew a great fascination and love for these Model Ts out of working on them like that because I was instead of being you're sitting inside in the bed all day long, I'd go out there to my shop and sit in my shop all day and tinker on the Model Ts. So one thing led to another, and I bought another one, and then I bought another one, and I took them apart and I restore them and I put them back together, and I don't know, it's just I've just grown into a great fascination with it, and so yeah, that's how all that began.
So, did you ever consider another car besides the Model T when you were getting into the hobby?
No, again, I got the Model T. The Model T that I bought was built as a display. It was built as a tinker. Well, what do they call it in trucks back in the day where they would pull up on the side of a street and it had doors and it had big thing built on the back and the doors opened up and had all kind of stuff in there for sale. The people that would sell those things, it
Yeah.
had a particular name. I can't remember the name, but anyway, that's what the truck was built as. So that's why I bought it, just to be able to display my food products. And so I really, I've always liked Model Ts. We had a man here in town that had them whenever I was growing up, Mr. Lancaster. A lot of the people around, matter of fact, I've run into people now from many other states that knew Mr. Lancaster from Pedal, and he had a big collection of them. So, and then John Tannehill, he lives over in Hattiesburg, not too far from here, and I know he's got a large collection of brass era tees, and seems like most everybody I've talked to in the in the Model T community, they know who John is. But so I always loved them, I always liked them, but I never really just wanted to get into them until I bought that first one for a different reason. And then after that, and then again having to just be um, not moving around very much, and so I went out there and started working on them in my shop. Because of that, that's what made me fall in love with them, I guess.
Gotcha. Yeah, they're easy to fall in love with for sure.
Well, they were easy to work on. I'm not a mechanic by any means. I try to do all my own things as much as I can to save some money. But I'm not a mechanic. I'm not somebody that can pop a hood on one of these newfangled trucks and do a lot of stuff to it. But these Model Ts, I found that I can do almost everything on them. Now I'm resurfacing heads, lapping valves. Doing complete valve jobs and rebuilding the bottom end. I figure, and it's easy to do. I can. Hell, YouTube's a really good source. There's all
Yeah.
kind of people out there, making videos and showing how to do these things. So I can come in and I can watch video and go out there and figure it out. And I found that it's pretty easy to do.
Vince up from Baggett Corner said they may have been called Hookster trucks up in his area.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that was somewhat of a regional name too.
Yeah. There is the man I bought it from told me what they called it, and I just can't remember. But it was a quality build, a company. If I could remember the name of the company who built it, there's a company in California who built the body for it. They did a really good job on it. But
Where did you find it at?
it was in Starkville, Mississippi.
Okay, and that's where you're from, right?
I'm from Hattiesburg, Mississippi.
Or
So
Mississippi,
yeah,
anyway.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So Starkville is about 3 hours north of me.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna bring up on screen here, or at least I'm going to attempt to, and we'll look at some of your collection of Model Ts because you've definitely added more on than
Yeah,
than just
I've got
one.
Yeah, I've got 10 of them now. That's a 1913 Roadster, and and you got a cool story behind it. It was during the transition period when Ford was transitioning to the new 1914 body style, but that one was built in June of 1913. So, Ford didn't have a rhyme or reason. If he had something, if he had a new body come out that could save him some money or could save on recalls, he would go ahead and switch over to it. So that's what he did there. He went ahead and switched over to that body style early. And so for 2 months, they produced the 1913 with the 1914 body on it. And that's one of those.
So I'm gonna ask you on each one of these as we go through them. Where did you find it at, and how often do you drive that particular car?
That one right there, I drive almost every day. I love that one. I actually drove it today. A lot of the guys came up from the Magnolia Model T Club, and we hung out here at my house, and they wanted to see this damn car that is the talk of the town right now. But so they all checked it out real good, and we ended up going and getting some lunch, and that's the car I drove to go get lunch. I make deliveries in that one for my food deliveries. I drive it a lot. If I'm going to the grocery store, going to Walmart, it's a showpiece. A lot of people would call it a trailer queen, but I don't have any trailer queens. They might look like a trailer queen, but I still drive them. I drive them as much as I possibly can. So
now all of yours, are they still 6-volt or 12?
a mixture of both, but I do try to convert them to 12-volt whenever I have time to. That one I converted to 12-volt already.
Yeah, I personally, I have some people, the purists will say, keep it 6-volt, nothing wrong with it. But I have no problem at all with the 12-volt. I think it's easier to find a fresh battery for one.
Yeah, the Magnolia Model T Club in Mississippi, they're all drivers. So whenever I bought mine and I started trying to tinker with it and figure it out, I reached out to them, and a guy named Dan Resch, he's the mechanic of the group. He's dealt with them for over 60 years. He's got a lot of knowledge in it, and he's a driver. So every one of the vehicles in the Mississippi, they're all drivers. There's not any purists that I know of in Mississippi. I guess the biggest purist that we would have would be John Tannehill, but he's still not a purist as far as getting fanatical with it. But and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's just two different sides of the coin. There's the other side of the coin where we like to drive them. So we have to make improvements to them so we can drive them for 4, 5, 6, 8 hours without having problems with them. So
speaking of that, what's the furthest you've driven any of your T's in one day?
4 or 5 hours.
Cool. Those are, like I said, it is fun, but it is tiring too. It's not like jumping in a modern car and driving 4 or 5 hours.
No, it's definitely not. We take, you take breaks. You got to stop and get fuel more often, but you stop and see things more too. And I like to tell people that Model Ts, my favorite thing about having them is it forces you to explore and experience the state that you've lived in your whole life, and you've never taken the time to slow down and explore it. Well, the Model T forces you to, because you have to be on back roads now. So
yeah. We drove across country in 2023, and I thought by the time we got to the Mississippi River, I would be bored out of my mind, but it was the total opposite. And I think if I've been in a modern vehicle, still going to the same pace or whatever, or going, speed limit or above even, we would have been bored out of our mind at that point.
Yeah.
The Model T just opens it up. I mean, you're more or less, it's almost like on a motorcycle, you're almost exposed to all the elements on the open car. And a little bit different in a closed car, but you see things that are different, through different eyes almost when you're driving at that speed. I missed a comment earlier. Joe said, wow, the doctor really started a real path for you whenever you had your episode and your heart attack and all that stuff. Let's see, I got another one here. My T has been 6-volt for at least 30 years. Never had an electrical problem. My dad's T was 12-volt. He couldn't keep an alternator working. We've had nothing but success with the 12 volts that we've had. Vince said, some would say problems are an endearing feature of the Model T. I'd have to agree with that. You're going to have some kind of problems along the way. Steve up in Canada, he said, made it. What have I missed? We just got started, Steve. We're talking about his first car, And we're going to get some other cars. He has 10 cars. He mentioned that earlier. And Super J 967 might want to be thinking about an express body was another suggestion, is what they may have been called. But again, that may have been a regional name for them as well.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's get to the second car here. We've got a bunch of them to get through. And I've got each one of these set up, different time frames. All right, what about this maroon color car?
All right, that's that's the Roadster pickup. That's in the 27. That's one of my latest ones that I bought. Actually, I drove to Texas to pick it up, and the guy wanted me to have it. He saw, because I make a lot of videos and I'm working on them constantly, and I'm always polishing them and I'm restoring them. I'm bringing them back to their former beauty. So this particular guy reached out to me and he said, "Look, I have this truck that I want you to have." He said, I'm not trying to make a killing off of it. He said, but I need to get something out of it. He said, but I see your videos and I appreciate what you do for them, and I want somebody like you to have it. And I asked him, I said, "What do you want for it?" He gave me a figure, and I said, "Man, I'm just not really looking for another one right now." I said, "I've got a shop full right now. I got a lot of projects going on." I said, I appreciate it, but I just don't have a time for it." And he said, "Well," he said, what if I offered it to you for this amount of money?" He gave me a stupid low amount of money to pay him for it. And I said, "Are you kidding me?" I said, "You really sell it to me for that?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "I would." He said, "I want to go to the right home." And I said, "Well, man, I mean, I can't pass that up." So long story short, I did. I ended up driving 8 hours across country. Well, not across country, but a couple states, in a enclosed trailer, because I didn't know what I was getting. I didn't know what kind of condition it was going to be in. I didn't know if I was going to blow the top off of it or what. So I hooked up to my big enclosed trailer and I just struck out to go get it, and ended up picking it up just like that. I could have hauled it on an open trailer, but he did. He had a lot of parts that came with it. He had the roof that came with it, but the roof was in tatters. He had boxes and boxes of parts. He gave me all of that stuff. So I mean, that the parts that he gave me was worth, or are worth more than what, yeah, I ended up paying him for it. I actually kind of felt bad about it. But when I pulled up at this man's house, he lived in about a $3 million house. So I don't think the money was an object for him at all. It belonged to a dear friend of his, he said, that had passed away. And he took it and he was wanting to restore it in the man's honor. And he just didn't have any knowledge for him, or want to. But so that's the reason he wanted me to have it, so I could bring it back to life. So I did. So I got it back home. And look, whenever I went and picked it up, it didn't even have a key. It didn't have a key, didn't have a battery. It looked terrible. As a matter of fact, I have a lot of videos on my Facebook page of me where I went and picked it up and what it looked like when I got it. So, it took me a couple of days. I went ahead and ordered. I use lithium batteries in my vehicles, so went ahead and ordered the battery, ordered a key. I found out the same key for my other 27 fit. It was a number 73, so I went ahead and ordered another key. Got a few things. Long story short, as soon as I turned it over, the valves went up and they stuck. So I ended up taking the head off and doing a whole valve job on it. And one thing after the other, ordering parts. You know how it is when you order a part from Lanes. It takes a week to get it, and then when you get that part, you put it on, and then you try to crank it, then you figure out you need another part. So now you have another week wait. So it just was one week after the other. After the other, there was more waiting than it was working. And I finally got the crank up and running, and I had an engine knock. Wow. So then I took the bottom cover off the engine, and I had play in the rods. So I ended up taking the rod caps off, pulling some shims out, getting it adjusted right, put back together. So now, anyway, long story short, it runs great. It's converted over. It's a Texas T, and somebody put the Texas T on completely backwards, so it was way out of firing order. So it took me a lot of time with Dan Resch on the phone trying to figure that firing order out and get it to where it would finally bust off and run. And whenever I finally had everything right, it did. It crunked right up and hummed like a sewing machine. So it runs great now, though.
forgot I accidentally muted myself. Vince from up in Canada is asking if you have a YouTube channel or just on Facebook.
Yeah, I don't do much on YouTube. Mostly arm wrestling videos, training, instructional videos, stuff for arm wrestling on my YouTube page. Most everything I do with these tees are on my TikTok. I create the video on TikTok, so it's automatically on there, but then I share it on Facebook.
Gotcha. All right. What about the next one over? The kind of what is that? A bluish gray?
Yes, it's a green. It's a light green, cream colored wheels. That's a 27 touring. It's a 12-volt Texas T. That's my other runner. One of those two right there, the two that are in the middle right there. That's the two that if I'm just going to Walmart, I'll go jump in one of them. Especially that green one. That green one fires up and runs so smooth, and the ride on it is so premium that it's almost like driving in a modern day vehicle. The ride on it, but it's got a cool story, being that it was one of the last days it was made. It's got matching numbers, so the engine and frame match. And the number of it goes back to the final week of production for the Model Ts. So that one makes that one kind of special.
Arm wrestling, we have a big championship up here. A friend of mine, Ryan Epsey, up in Canada, I guess.
I know Ryan Espy.
Espy.
Ryan Espy is a world champion. He's one of the best in Canada. Yeah, I'm good friends with Ryan.
How about that, Vince? All right, third car over is the same car we just looked at a minute ago, correct?
Yep.
All right, and now we've got the one you use for your food displays.
Yep, that's Ducey right there. I actually that's a display that I built for it to put on it. The one that I'm talking about, it had a big box built on the back, big box. You couldn't see around it. It was so large and so wide, and it was so cumbersome. Even trying to drive it, it just made the body kind of teetery. So I ended up taking it off. That's the reason I bought it, was to be able to display my food items out of that box. But it was just too much of a display, so I ended up taking it off and building that smaller display that you see on there now. But it's a 1922 Express wagon.
And mostly just for displays, with your food stuff or whatever.
Yeah, I do drive it around town. It's fun to drive. It's not the most comfortable one, so it's not the one I'm going to just go jump in and go to Walmart in, especially if I'm in a hurry. But I do drive it just to keep it up, keep it running. But I don't drive it around on longer trips, anything like I do the two middle ones.
Vince missed the first part of it and asking briefly again about what sort of food items. He's in the service industry, so to speak, too.
Yeah. All right. So my background is personal training and sports nutrition. I'm a sports nutritionist. So everything that I do is on a healthy basis, gut health, low sodium, things like that. I have 14 different products, and they're all for gut health or seasoning. It's different seasonings. So I have seasonings, barbecue sauce, hot sauce, and then a lot of fermented foods for gut health.
Is that the engine painted red in that one, or is it by chance a high compression head?
No, it's I just painted it red.
Okay.
Yeah, when I had to take the head off to do that valve job. So before it was coated and junk. So I sprayed it down, degreaser, got it cleaned up, scrubbed it down real good, and sprayed it with some high temp red.
Yeah, our touring car has it's old, period correct, I guess, whatever. High compression, giant power head, I think it is, and it's painted red. I don't know why it got painted red years ago, but it looks like it's been on there for 100 years. We'll see what's up next. All right. Different picture, different angle, I guess, whatever, same cars, correct?
Yeah, same cars.
Got some nice property there.
I appreciate it.
Vince has also got another question. Any TTs in your fleet? I didn't think I saw any.
I don't have one on my property, but I do have one to go pick up. It's actually a TT fire truck, a 23 TT fire truck. And it's in Arkansas. So I have an event to do. I'm hosting the USA National Championship in Tulsa, Oklahoma June the 27th. So whenever I go out there, I'm actually going to be going straight through this town that I have to pick the fire truck up. So I'm going to take my trailer, I'm going to drop it off on his property, I'm going to go do the tournament, and then on the way back, I'm going to pick up the trailer and the fire truck and bring them back home.
And he's also asking about the body work. I know we touched on this earlier, but like I said, he tuned in a little bit late. What can you tell him a little bit about that one, about the one used for the displays?
Yeah, that express wagon. It was built. It was a very professional build out of a company out of California built it. But when they built the body, they also built a display for the back of it. I have pictures of it on my Facebook. You just scroll back, you'll see pictures of it whenever I first bought it. But it had doors that opened up. I cannot remember what they called that style, but it had doors open. When the doors opened, it had a row of lights above it, and it had shelves. And on the sides of the doors, it says "What's on the truck today?" And then it just have. It's pretty cool little display. It was just huge. It was too damn big for my wants to be able to load it up. I actually ended up having to order a special size enclosed trailer to make because the display was so large it wouldn't go inside of a normal 8.5 foot wide enclosed trailer. I had to have one a foot taller.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I agree with you, Vince. Bruce would be envy of a TT fire truck for sure.
It's an envious one too. I've seen a lot of the fire trucks. This one right here has got a ton of brass on it. It came with all the brass nozzles, the brass lanterns that you walk through with, gas lanterns. Like I said, the brass gas nozzle has got another gas nozzle. Oh, I'm sorry, not gas. Water nozzle. It's got another water nozzle attached to the front of the truck that's all brass. It's got the brass bells that you clean. It's a really nice truck. It's got a ton of brass.
All right. He's asking, are some of the original pictures on your Facebook page?
Of
the food truck display truck?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
All right. Same cars again, man. That's a beautiful picture.
Yeah. Appreciate it. I've got a 14. I'm sorry, a 12. I've got a 12 that's not in any of these pictures. It's a depot hack, but it's meticulously restored as well.
All right. Where are we at here? I've got these pictures spaced out every 6 or 8 seconds, so sometimes it takes a second. All right. Car that we're about to talk about.
Yeah.
A lot of people have some mixed emotions and feelings on this car. So tell us exactly what we're about to look at, where you found it and everything, and I'll let the video start playing.
Okay. The story behind it is I ended up buying a package deal on some teas in Atlanta, Georgia, from a man that I don't feel comfortable telling his story, but he had to sell his collection. It wasn't an option. He had to sell it. So I go to his place, and I really don't even know what all I'm getting. I bought a lot of stuff from him. Several different bodies, front ends, rear ends, a full car, a running car, and I knew I had this. And he was telling me he had a touring. He had a body for a touring that he hadn't restored yet, and that's actually the same place where I got the 12 depot hack that I hadn't even picked up yet. It's still at his house. So.
I've got the exterior pictures in order for what we're going to talk about, but I just wanted you to tell a little bit of the backstory of how you come across this.
All right, so that's how I came across it. When I went to pick it up, that's when I saw what I had. And again, whenever he was describing it to me, he was telling me he had a 1910 touring. So I thought I was going down there to pick up the body of a 1910 touring among all the other stuff that I bought. And I get down there and I see a Tourabout, and I'm like, okay, cool. I have a 1910 Tourabout. And I was like, well, that's kind of rare. So he gives me all the paperwork for it, and I'm driving home, And I'm looking at the paperwork and I'm like, hold on, this is not a 10. This is way too early for a 10. So I looked through my numbers. I said, no, I thought it was June originally. It turned out to be July the 2nd of '09. And anyway, long story short, I just started researching it real hard at that point. And the 10s were already rare, but the 9s were only made for a month. So I started trying to find one, and I couldn't find one anywhere, not an '09. I saw a couple of them that was listed as 10s, but even digging in on them, I was finding discrepancies with them. And my fascination got so wild with it that I got kind of fanatical in the way that I was researching and the extent that I was researching and wanting to prove or disprove. At this point, I really don't care. I'd love for it to be what I think that it is, but if I got to disprove it, I'm looking for one or the other. Either I want to prove it or disprove it. So I was going to some wild extents to do one or the other in the way of, like with the Benson Ford Research Center. Every time I saw one, I would reach out to the people. If I saw a picture of a Tourabout, I don't care if it was an '09 or 10, whatever they were claiming it to be. If I saw a picture of one, I would reach out to the owners and I would ask them what the vehicle number was. And sometimes, a lot of times, it was already listed. It may be listed in their Facebook post, or it might be listed on the YouTube page where somebody was selling it, because I did that. But anyway, I would get the vehicle's number and I would order the build sheets off of it from Benson Ford just to see what it was, to compare it to the build sheets on mine that I was ordering on mine, and to compare their pictures to my pictures or to my vehicle. So long story short, I've come up with quite a bit of information that I think is true and accurate, but it doesn't necessarily line up with the information in Bruce's book, the Model T Ford that he wrote. And I've read that book, especially everything about Tourabouts. I've read multiple times, and the one thing that I found in his book that he even contradicts himself a couple of times. It took 35 years to write that book, so I feel like he had certain knowledge at the beginning of the book, and then later on in the book he gained different knowledge, so he wrote that down too, because there's several times in the book that he contradicts his own self in this book. But I can give you example after example, but for one example, this vehicle right here, he talks about the Tourabout. When he first starts describing the Tourabout, he says that the rear seat matched the front seat. But then later on in the book, he starts showing pictures. He shows pictures of two different Tourabouts in his book, only two. And both of the Tourabout pictures that he shows in there have straight back seats. And he talks about one picture or one Tourabout specifically in detail. And he said, we're going to use this car many times throughout the book. So I went through that book to find that car every time he talked about it. Every time he used it, he was using it for examples, for pictures, for one thing or the other. One thing that he used it for pictures for was the seats. He took the seats out of it. He took pictures of the back of the seats, of the front seat and the rear seat of this Tourabout. And that Tourabout, the seats matched the seats of my Tourabout identical. I posted pictures of that on my Facebook page. But again, he even, like I said, he writes that the Tourabout had a matching back seat to the front seat. But then later on, he shows pictures of two individual seats for the front seat and then a bench seat cushion for the back seat. So that's a complete contradiction in what he said earlier. But again, my seats, according to the pictures that he shows, and I can't really go off of what he has in his book a whole lot, especially at the same time that I'm already telling you that I don't believe everything in the book. So I have to take bits and pieces. I take it for what it is. I'm
All
not
right.
going to be so.
I've got
Anyway,
some pictures of the seats coming up here in a second.
yeah.
What is different on the exterior of these cars? And Joe was asking if it was an '09 open runabout, but it's a Tourabout. And got a question here: which edition of the encyclopedia are you using? Do you know if there's a different edition?
I have not seen a different edition, but it's the
Yeah, that's the one I have too. Yeah, I'm not familiar with a different edition either, unless we're talking about two different books here.
it's 1994 copyright. Is yeah,
All right.
but I have multiple books. It's not
Yeah.
this. This is the only one that it was written by him. But all the other books that people say, if you own a Model T, you have to have this book. This is the Model T Bible. Okay, well I have those books too.
So tell us a little bit more about the exterior of this particular year and this particular what the Tourabouts had on them. If the exterior was different compared to the regular touring cars and the runabouts or what have you.
Okay, the touring car, yeah, there are several differences between the touring and the Tourabout, and there's another thing that I would dispute that he writes in his book that he says because there's not so for each year he writes down how many of each body was made of each year. So you can go to 1909 and you can see the Ford cars, the Model Ts that were built in 1909, and he has a number for each one of the body styles that were built. And there's not a number for Tourabout in either 1909 or 1910. There's no number, but he writes in there that all the numbers were grouped in with tourings. So the touring number is really large for the tourings because all the Tourabouts were grouped into that number. I disagree with that wholeheartedly, especially if any of these Tourabouts that are out there that I'm researching, if any of them are accurate, they're all listed as roadsters. Every one of the build sheets that I order and I get back, that Tourabout's listed as a roadster. And that makes a lot of sense because a Tourabout is a roadster with an additional back seat and a different roof, a longer roof. That's the only difference. It's a roadster with an additional back seat and a longer roof. So it would make sense that they would list it as roadsters, especially when a lot of these were going out as bare bones. They were being shipped out to the dealership hubs like Northwestern, bare bones, stripped down, no windshields, no headlights, no radiator, no roof. They were being shipped out like that to Northwestern. Then when Northwestern gets them, they were doing the final assembly there. So what do you think it looked like rolling out of Ford? Bare bones. It looked like a roadster. So yeah, they're listing all these the Tourabouts as roadsters because that's really what it was. A roadster was a different look anyway than a touring. So it never made sense to me that they would ship it out and call it a touring when it was a Tourabout. Hell, even the roofs are different. That's another key factor in my build here is I have the accurate roof. When I tell you the accurate roof is if you knew about the top sockets on a touring, well, the top sockets on a touring, they bow out. The top sockets on a roadster go straight up. The only difference between a roadster roof and a Tourabout roof is the Tourabout is longer. My roof top sockets go straight up. So it matches the roadster top sockets. It's just a longer roadster roof, which is what a Tourabout roof is supposed to be. It's not supposed to bow out like a touring does. So that's just a few of the differences between the roadster or the Tourabout and the touring.
So Vince is asking, so they go out bare bones and get accessorized at the dealer?
Correct. That's another upgrade for the dealer. So it was a win-win on all sides. So Ford got to get it out of their factory quicker. The hub got to get it at a cheaper rate, and then they also got to accessorize it with things they were getting in a local market. So they were saving on shipping. They wouldn't having to have all that stuff shipped over there to them, saving on shipping space as well. And then when they're getting it over there, they have a lot of things that are being produced by local places. So if you look up like Minneapolis, Minnesota, some of the top coach builders and headlight builders were based out of there. Matter of fact, Minneapolis, Minnesota was almost a Detroit, Michigan. If it wasn't for Detroit, Michigan, Minneapolis probably would have been the Motor City. But so there's a lot going on there, and that's where Northwestern was based out of. So they're getting these things in bare bones, and now they're selling all the local items for the vehicles. Somebody comes in, they say, "Well, I want an upgraded system. I don't want the drip system with the carbide rocks. Give me the new Presto Light tank." So they would sell them that. They'd sell them upgraded headlights. So they'd sell them the locally obtained windshield for it. And so on and so forth. And I believe they were also painting them. And that would explain why in Bruce's book, even it stumped him whenever he said that in 1910 it's listed that all vehicles were to be painted Brewster green, but it stumped him because he said he was documenting vehicles as original colors that weren't green. There were other colors, and he couldn't figure out why they were listed as green, but there was no evidence that it was ever green. It was a different color. He couldn't figure that out. It's my belief that they were being shipped over bare bones. They were being assembled over there, and they were being painted there per the customer's wants. And these are all things that I run past. Either I gain the knowledge by something I'm reading, or just the theory, or it's from one of the historians or archivists that I'm talking to. But if nothing else, I run it past all of them just to get their thoughts on it. And every one of these thoughts that I'm sharing with you now are thoughts that I've shared with them, and everyone agrees that, yeah, it's not only possible, it's plausible that all of that happened.
All right, got another question here, and I'm not going to try to butcher the name of this YouTube channel. Velos Stigma, I'm not sure. Anyway, sorry about butchering that. It says, how many Tourabouts were built as runabouts, and how many were built as touring, and how many of them have the same backseat as yours?
If I understand the question correctly, how many Tourabouts were built as tourings?
How many Tourabouts was built as runabouts? And how many were built as touring cars? I don't know if you can see it on the bottom of the screen there. I brought it up.
Well, yeah, it's tiny on my screen. I can't see it. But a Tourabout started as a runabout. So a Tourabout is a runabout with an additional back seat and a longer roof. That's really the only difference between a Tourabout and a runabout. You have the extra rear seats. So if you're asking how many of the Tourabouts were built, we were a couple of hundred at most in 09. And we're thinking somewhere between 12 to 1,500 for 1910 total. So possibly a couple of hundred in 09. I think it was probably less than that, because from what I'm being told right now, on June the 1st, 3 were made. On June the 2nd, 4 were made. So if you followed that trend, they would have to make a lot in that month to get up to hundreds. So it was probably in the scores amount, somewhere the 50 to 70 range, maybe, not in the hundreds, I wouldn't think. None of them were made as tourings, because a touring is a vehicle with doors on it. That was the difference with the touring. It had a larger rear seat. A touring rear seat would have been a little bit wider, and it would have had doors over it, and it was a different roof style too. The roof, the top sockets for a touring bowed out, and it made the roof larger in width. So none of them were made as tourings.
Gotcha. That makes sense. All right, there's the back shot of the exterior there. And like I said, we're going to get to some more, I think interiors next. I can't remember seats. Let's see here.
Now, I've also seen some people talk about a couple of things that they believed that I was trying. They believe it's supposed to have a two pedal system. No, that started ending around 500 and was gone by the 800 number. They believe that it has incorrect fenders because they say that it needs flat fenders, and what they're talking about is the front fenders at the bottom of the front fender. The early fenders would have been flat, and then mine has a bill under it, but that started around 2500. Mine is number 6101, guys. That's what I want y'all to understand. I don't have a number 10 car or number 50 car. I have 6101, built in July the 2nd, 1909. So that is the correct fenders for it. It's correct rear end, no rivet rear end. It is the correct roof for it. It doesn't have the bow top sockets. It got the straight top sockets that matches the Tourabout or the Runabout. Everything looks correct on the car, the way that it's the way that the pieces that came with it. The pieces that are not correct are the headlights, and the Prestolite tank right there. But it didn't come with that. My build sheet shows it not coming with headlights or a windshield or a generator. It didn't come with any of that. It came stripped down as bare bones. But it doesn't talk about the back seat or the roof. It says that it came with a roof. It didn't tell how long it was. It didn't tell that it came with a back seat or if it didn't come with a back seat. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. What about the running boards here? How often or how long were those made like that?
That ended in December of 1909. So that is correct. That's the full ribs. After December 1909, they went to the short dashes.
Gotcha. Let's get playing here again. Hey, Bruce, he's tuning in a little bit late. Bruce has a collection of tees as well. All right, you brought up the Prestolite. Tell us a little bit about that.
Prestolite was an upgraded system for the headlights, and that's merely all it was an upgraded system. Instead of having to turn the water knob to drip the water down on the carbide rocks to generate the gas, this was a tank that was put in place, and in place of it, pressurized, held a lot of gas. You literally, it just made it was just an upgraded acetylene system for the headlights, and it's period correct. So that was probably an upgraded system sold to the customer by Northwestern, along with whatever headlights they picked out, which I don't know what kind they are. I put some pictures out asking the community for help to try to determine what kind of headlights these are. If I had to guess, it's going to be a company that was local to Minneapolis, because that was the trend for Northwestern, was to sell local items, because they didn't have to have them shipped in. They were saving money. So they were selling headlights and windshields and everything that came in that they had to accessorize these vehicles with local builders items.
All right, got a production number question. He says, so do you think McCallie was incorrect in saying that the Tourabout production should have been 2,351 runabouts produced in 1909 and not the 7,728 Tourings produced that year?
I believe that it should have been in the runabout number, see, that's another. There wasn't a runabout. They weren't listed as runabouts. They were listed as roadsters. So I have issues with that. I have issues with what he writes in this book. When you get the build sheets, it doesn't have an option for a runabout. Why does he have that listed there? So,
all right, I definitely don't know anything about early production numbers like that. That's for sure on my end.
Yeah. Well, they had check marks. If you've ever seen a build sheet on one, they had that in the top left-hand corner, and they had 5 cars listed up there, and a runabout was not one of them. A roadster was. So I'm not going to say something incorrectly, and I'm not going to say that I'm not going to on purpose say something incorrectly. I'm not going to say that he listed them under runabout or he listed them under touring and they should have been under runabout. They shouldn't have been under runabout because that didn't even exist. They should have been under roadster.
All right. Let's see here. We're at the Presto light in the pictures here. All right. Let's talk about the top. You touched on this earlier.
And another thing that I
we'll watch this video you got here
was on the Tourabouts. The Tourabouts did not have that.
I don't know if that's correct or not. The way that it's attached to the back. I've heard some different ideas about whether it could or couldn't have been correct. And what I'm hearing is the roof is supposed to be a two-piece roof. And when you remove, and I'm hearing that it's very plausible that the roof did attach to the back seat. And the idea there was when you remove the back seat, because it was made to, you got to remember, this vehicle was made to be a utility vehicle, something you took the seat off whenever you didn't need it, you put the seat back on whenever you did need it. It had other accessories you put on the back. You can put a mother-in-law seat back there. You can put a toolbox back there. This was a work vehicle that could be converted into a family vehicle. So the idea was when you remove the back seat, you also remove the back half of the roof. Because you think about it, what happens right now when you remove the back seat and the back half of the roof's not removable? What the hell are you doing with that back half of that roof? It's going to flap in the wind? No. So it's plausible that that Ford made that roof to where it separates, and then when you remove the back seat, the back half of the roof removes with it to get it all out of the way for you to put your toolbox or your mother-in-law seat.
All right, where are we at here? Yeah, it's crazy the options that they had even back then 100 years ago, 100 and some years ago.
Yep.
All right, now you sanded on the body and talked about the body filler some here.
Yeah.
I don't know why I've got that particular picture in here. All right, tell us about this tag. What is this?
That's the Northwestern tag, and it appears unmolested in every way. Even the back side of the tacks, there's no dents on the tips. It appears unmolested. I want to take it off so bad, it's ridiculous. I want to take it off to see what's behind it, but at the same time, I don't want to molest it at all. So
yeah, that makes perfect sense. I'd want to take it off as well, just to see.
Yeah. So at least until I get someone to look at, and that's the end goal, is to have someone. I'm going to find the right historian. Right now, I have not found the right historian or the right archivist. I'm looking for the right one, and I don't want to hurt feelings whenever if you guys are watching, but you know what I'm talking about. You guys have great knowledge in Ford, you have great knowledge in Model Ts, but in this specific vehicle, I need the right archivist or the right historian that has the knowledge in this particular type of vehicle in this particular year. Because from what we're understanding is that body was changing. Pontiac was the only bodybuilder for the Tourabout, and he was steadily trying to streamline the body, not only this body, but the other bodies, and make them cheaper and faster, and trying to keep up with Ford's pace and Ford's demand to make things cheaper. So he was steadily changing this body. I believe the very first Tourabouts didn't look like the Tourabout 2 months later. I don't believe the ones 2 months later look like the very last ones built in May or June of 1910. So that's what I'm taking a trip to the Benson Ford Museum so I can research. I need to see what the blueprints look like when they first came out with this damn thing. I need to see pictures of what the first ones looked like whenever they first rolled off. I need to make sure that seat is correct. Or if it's not correct, I'll be the first one to come on here and tell everyone that, hey, yeah, this seat is just jacked up. It's not right. But I mean, everything that we're looking at right now, like I said, you can go back, and I'm not saying I believe everything in this book, but there are pictures of 2 Tourabouts in this book, and both of them have the straight back seats. So, I mean, how are you going to explain that?
All right, you were saying something about you thought it was primer whenever you looked up under some of the paint here.
Yeah. Well, I didn't think it was supposed to be black. So I was looking for other colors. So when I sanded the black down, the black, within one stroke of the sandpaper, the black started revealing another color, a gray color. Well, then I had to work and work and work to go through that gray. I mean, I worked on it until I hit a red color. And then I went through that red color kind of quick. And then I hit the steel or the wood. But so I kept thinking, and that was on every body part. I did that on the frame. I did it on the rear end. I did it on the spokes. I did it on every body part, every type of body part. I did it on the top sockets. I did it everywhere, and I kept coming up with the same colors. The only exception was on the wood. I would come up with a different primer, but that gray, that real thick gray, I kept hitting, and I was thinking that was the paint until I finally talked to somebody who knew, one of the historians. I'm not sure which one it was. I have all their names here too, but I was as soon as I told them that, they said no, that wasn't the paint. That's tough stuff. I said, what's tough? I never heard of tough stuff. Tough stuff was a body filler. There were so many imperfections in the steel and in the wood. They would put that thick layer of tough stuff over it, and then they would work it smooth. It was real thick. It was even thicker than it is now, but they worked it down to where it was smooth, and then put the thin coat of paint over it. So the one layer of real thin paint is accurate. It's supposed to be a thin layer of paint. It would come off really fast, really easy.
Is there some green up there near the seat?
That's what we're wondering. We're actually wondering, is the black green? Because and then some of the other builders, I think it was Larry DeBaugh that won the Stanosky Award for his 1910 Tourabout. He researched it way more than me. Because he won the Stanosky Award with his, and he only lost 2 points. I think 2 points on his build, which means his car was accurate. He researched the hell out of it to build it to be an accurate Tourabout. So I talked to him in depth, and I'm going to his place. He lives in Maryland. I'm going to go up there, and I'm going to talk with him in person. I'm going to see his car. But we bounced a lot of ideas around, and all of these things that I'm talking to you about, I ran past him, and he said, "Yeah, I mean, it sounds real reasonable to me. I can't say that it's not true." But
they used the tough stuff in lieu of primer. Is that?
No. Primer was first. It was a red oxide. Mainly, they used a couple different types of primer, but mainly red oxide primer, and then the tough stuff over that. But the tough stuff, from what I'm understanding, is it was several layers that made it so thick. That's from what I'm understanding. It could have been one thick ass layer, but from what I'm understanding, for some reason, it was many layers that made it real thick, and then they would work it to a smooth finish, and then paint over that. But anyway, back to Larry. Larry told me that he's got a car. I think he said he's still got the green, a green one, or he had one that he confirms that unless it's in perfect bright sunlight, it looks black. But then another, I think it was one of the archivists that I talked to, said that a 100-year-old Brewster green would match black. So there's theory out there that this thing's not black, that it's Brewster green. It's just a 117-year-old Brewster green, and it's possible.
Yep. All right.
The build sheet shows it coming off as Brewster green, but again, I feel like it left the factory with no paint on it. Other information that I'm getting is that they didn't paint the vehicle until it was completely assembled. There's ways to prove that by removing the U-bolts and everything on the frame. They didn't paint the frame or the body until it was completely assembled. As one, I'm not going to say that's a fact, but that's one thing that I'm hearing is they didn't paint any of it until it was completely assembled. So mine left there not completely assembled, so it wasn't painted. But the clerks were listing everything as Brewster Green just because that was supposed to be the common knowledge of every vehicle. Again, another nugget that I share with you is all these build sheets that I've gotten. You can look at them side by side, and they're all written. It looks like they're written robotically. They're also the same handwriting. This is the check mark strokes, everything. It looks like somebody sat down with a stack of these things and pre-filled them all out. They're certainly not filled out by different people. The build sheet goes through 3 different departments. It's got 3 different foremen's names written on there. That would make you feel like that each department would fill out their own part of the build sheet. What I presume they had was each department had a ticket, and they all gave their tickets in to the clerk, and that clerk's sitting down with a stack of build sheets, and she's filling them all out because every section was filled out with that same handwriting. And then a build sheet from today looked identical to the build sheet handwriting and style from 2 weeks later. They all look robotic in strokes.
Bruce is saying, because Vincent asked a question about, so you're thinking the paint had actually oxidized so much that it aged and become black or appeared black. Bruce says all the colors were very dark back then, and yes, they do turn darker. I have the original front doors off of my 11 touring car, still original paint. They look black, but they're really blue. So that does kind of help out confirming that. All right, let's get on.
And that's not the first time I've heard that. That's the reason I'm talking about it now, because I've heard it enough to where I believe that it's possible.
Yeah, and we have, there's a lot of questions and comments over here on the side. I don't know if you can see any of them or not, but they are more than what we normally have. So if I miss anyone, I apologize about that. And let's get up under the car now. So you did the same thing on the frame here, is that right?
Yeah. I sanded any different piece you can sand, I sanded it down. Matter of fact, I went through looking for parts that were not original, and that's how I found things that I believe is not original, is because they didn't have the same layers of paint and primer.
All right. And that's the same area right there. You sent me a good bit of pictures here. All right. Tell us about the early lubrication on these, for some people that don't know.
I actually don't know that much about that. I'm still in the body right now. These items like the lubrication and different pieces of the front end, different pieces. There were so many pieces that were interchangeable and aftermarket accessories that could be added later on that doesn't prove or disprove anything. So I'm not on any of that stuff at all. Right now, I'm on the body trying to prove or disprove that this body is what I believe it is. Just because a front axle has a different part on it, that could have been added at any time. I don't care about that. That doesn't tell me anything about what this car is.
Now, I know some people have some questions about the rear end, I'm sure.
It's an accurate rear end. I've had several people look at it. It's an accurate rear end.
Yeah, no more than I know about them. I feel confident in that part.
Yeah. It's actually called no rivet wide track. I believe I'm saying that right.
That sounds right. All right, where are we at here? All right, let's talk about the seats real quick. All right,
so if you see the seats, and then you show the pictures of the seats that are in Bruce's encyclopedia of what a Tourabout seat looks like, they match identically. The only thing you're going to see different is some extra bracing on my back seats, but those, it's a very apparent that somebody added those. It was a homemade job. Somebody just put extra bracing. It's like maybe they were They were too heavy, so there was too much sponge in the seat. So they put some extra braces under the original braces on the back seat. But if
Yeah,
you look beyond the added braces, it's the same identical construction, the same springs. Now, that's a joinery that I'm not sure. I mean, it's shop. There's no doubt. I have a. That's my background is construction, and I can tell that's shop built and hand forged. The steel brackets, well, shop forged. I'm not going to say hand forged, but some type of shop, a crude early forging method, and then a shop joinery. That's one of the main things I'm going to look at too whenever I go to Benson Ford is the constructions methods they used for their seats. And if I can ever find one of these things, I'll just go to the car and look. But everybody that I know so far that may have an accurate one, like Larry DeBaugh or Brent Terry, they don't have their factory seats anymore. So I can't go off of that.
Gotcha.
So there's several things I'm going to be looking at next week whenever I go to Benson Ford. That's one of them right there, to prove or disprove that construction method, to prove or disprove the back seat entirely, to prove or disprove that skin that's over the back seat. Now, I was told that skin is accurate, whether it's the original skin or not, but the skin was accurate, that Pontiac was building that skin over the back seat to protect it and to streamline the process, to make it faster and easier and cheaper.
Yeah, that was definitely a goal.
Yeah, but that back seat matches this the back seat of the. It shows really good pictures of the Tourabout that's in his book, and
Yeah,
I've seen other ones now. I've been online. I'm looking at. There's a red one. You can Google it. You can just Google these Tourabouts, and there's a red one out there. Really good pictures of a red one. It's got the smooth straight back seat, just like mine.
Yeah, I've got the side by side pictures coming up here in just a second from the book. You said someone added these brackets. You think here?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, they're crude. Not the ones under the bottom, but see that first one that you're looking at, yeah, that one that I just touched right there, it's got a flat bar soldered over the original brace. If you'll back up a little bit, go in reverse and show the very first rib, that's the original one. See, that's the original one. It doesn't have the flat bar over it. The first one, what do we have? I think five or five braces right there. The very first, the end ones don't have the flat bar. But somebody's gone on all the middle braces and added a flat bar. And I presume that was to strengthen the weakening braces. You see the differences between the two that you're showing right there?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. The one closest to us right there is the original. That's what it, and then the second one, it has that as well. It just has a flat bar soldered to the top of it. And then it has those wires soldered on top of the flat bars.
Vince said, are they all C-channel braces all the way across?
Yeah. Uh-huh. Just like that first one. It's just got that flat bar soldered to the top of them on just the middle ones. Yeah, somebody's gone in and added that shit. And then they added that wire on top, and it's just a very crude. You can tell it's not shop made. It's a crude addition.
Let's see here. I'm almost positive I've got the pictures mixed. Here we go.
Yeah, that's the front seats side by side. My original front seat, and then the one in the book, and then this is my original back seat, and then the back seat in the book. And if you remove those added flat bars, they're identical. But again, in Bruce's book, at one point he tells you that the back seat was supposed to match the front seat, and if that was the case, it wouldn't even have a bench cushion at all. It'd have two cushions to match the clamshell shape.
All right, tell us about the B there.
All of my knowledge about B stamps are just for Bodette, which was Pontiac. So mine is a Pontiac body. All of the Tourabouts were Pontiac bodies, and that's all the knowledge that I'm getting. Nothing disputes that Pontiac was the only bodybuilder for Tourabouts, and Pontiac was known. And I've talked to some people that will tell you that every Pontiac body had B stamps in it. But then I've talked to other people that swear there was no rhyme or reason, that some of them did, some of them didn't. Some of them had numbers. It's most common, from what I understand, to have a B and a series of numbers. And there was no rhyme or reason on the numbers. It could be one number, or it might be four numbers. Nobody's ever tried to figure that out. But and Pontiac and Bodette, they didn't leave any records behind for us to go back and study. But all of the seats have a singular B stamped into the frame.
Yeah, that one's pretty deep there.
Yeah, and they all match. It's just
Yeah.
my camera's not picking up pictures real good, but they all look the same. They're all about the same depth, and it's a very sharp B too. It's almost like a cookie cutter edge on the B lettering. Like it wasn't like the die, the stamp was a sharp B. It wasn't concave or sloped in any way. It's like the B cut through the wood.
Gotcha. Bruce said, well, no one likely ever assumed anyone would ask 110 years later. I think he's right about that.
Well, I know.
I'm sure no one expected these cars to still be around. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But anything we have today or whatever modern vehicles, I'm sure they won't be around in 110 years.
Yeah.
So there's just some more shots of the seat frames and everything that you sent me here.
Yeah. And again, I'm not saying that's accurate. I'm listing all these pictures because I want somebody who knows, because they have seen an accurate one, or they seen a picture of it or something like that, to come out. I don't want somebody to come out and say, oh, well, you're just wrong and you're stupid. That pisses me off. Don't do that. If you have some real factual knowledge, I'll listen to you and we can debate it. We can talk about it and I'll learn from you. And I've done that with the other people that come at me in that manner. But don't come at me with, you don't know what the hell you're talking about because I read Bruce's book and I know what the hell I'm talking about. So you're just stupid. Don't do that. You're barking up the wrong tree with that one. I think you're on silent or something.
I don't know how I keep going muted. I got a question here. Have you ever visited the Fleming's Pumpkin Run that specializes in brass era through 1930? I don't think I've ever been to that.
No. I'm going to be the first to tell you, I don't have a length of time in Model Ts. What I do have is a vast amount of knowledge in studying and being able to study and knowing how to study. I'm a study fanatic. I don't watch TV because TV's too boring. I either have to work or I study, and my wife's the same way. I married the same type of person. She's a freaking brain study holic. But I mean, that's just what we do. So I don't have to be in. So we left an era where it would take 35 years to write this book, where nowadays it could be written in a matter of weeks, probably, because we can process information, we can gain information, and what would have taken months by mail or attending in person or going through paperwork, now we can gain that same amount of knowledge in seconds. So. And even a greater amount of knowledge. So it just because somebody didn't grow up in it or hadn't been in it for 60 years, that don't mean they don't know how to get the information just as good, if not better, than somebody who did.
Yep, gotcha. Well, Sean, I really appreciate you coming on tonight and sharing what you've found with us and sharing your other tea collection. And maybe we can get some more answers and get an update and whatever you find in a couple of weeks or a couple of months, what have you, and see where things go with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll definitely continue to share what I bring out. Like I said, I'll be there next week. I'll be there all day Friday. And whatever I do uncover, I'll put it out there. And again, if I uncover a whole bunch of pictures that show the accurate seat as completely different than mine, or if I gain some type of knowledge that mine was that it rolled off as a roadster and not a tourabout. But all I'm doing right now is I'm sharing the information that I have gotten from so many different sources, and I'm just sharing that information. And if you don't want to take it and listen to it for what it is, then that's up to each individual's prerogative. But I'm just sharing the knowledge.
Got one more question before we get off here. What brand of coil box would that car have had? You know, yeah, because I know the engine's gone out of it. We didn't talk about that or anything, but do you have any idea on the coil box brand?
I think it was Kingston. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Yeah, right. I know that it was.
All right. Well, if you happen to run across that in the next day or so, throw that up on your Facebook, and I can answer some more questions too, because I'm sure you'll get some.
That's in my build sheet. That's in my build sheet. It shows the coil box and the carburetor in my build sheet, and I'm pretty sure it is Kingston.
All right, good deal. Well, again, man, I appreciate you coming on with us, and appreciate everyone. We had a good crowd earlier, up till about 5 minutes ago. After we get past an hour, it starts kind of dwindling down a little bit. But appreciate you coming on. Appreciate everybody tuning in. And like I said, we'll do this again one day and get an update. And we'll have another Todd Talks on in about 3 or 4 weeks with another guest, and we'll announce that. And no telling what we'll get into.
Yep, so, sounds good.
But again, I appreciate it, Sean. Y'all have a good night.
Thank you. You too.